sounds like Don Flemmons to me. How you doing, Don?
I'm doing all right.
It's great to see you again. It's been, I reckon, probably 10, 11 years ago, maybe, when we sat down on the stage at Spirit Square. But watching the physical exertion that you put out to perform with no amplification, so you're doing this authentic presentation of this cultural music, it was just mind-blowing to me at how much energy it took to put that show on.
Well, you know, a lot of my roots, even though I do a lot of old-time and roots music, a lot of my roots as a performer come from people like Louis Jordan and Chuck Berry, T-Bone Walker, like really big showmen. I started to think about vaudeville, and I started thinking about people like Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin, and then when I started to learn the songs of people like Charlie Poole, I saw there were elements that were similar or the same, at least performance art. And so I started to present that performance art out there with a combination of it all, you know?
You had a period of time before you pretty much fell in love with it.
Exactly.
And then through that process, if I understand right, you began to learn the value.
Absolutely.
Did that change your life?
Yes, absolutely, without a doubt. One of the things that had driven me in old-time music were the songsters, and they were these musicians that were solo performers that weren't necessarily just blues singers, and they weren't necessarily just country singers. They sort of fit in this odd gray area, which I liked, because being a fan of rock and roll, bebop, jazz, folk music, as well as old-time music, I like those gray areas, and I like to be able to find music in which even players that are the purest have like one song that's like in this gray area that is completely unlike other parts of their repertoire, you know? For example, like Skip James, for example, he does a song that's the same song as Way Downtown by Doc Watson, which Doc Watson heard from Uncle Dave Macon. Just to know that there's a gray area where a blues singer and a country singer have a song that's in common with each other, that drew me in. So when I met Joe Thompson, I found confirmation to a much bigger African-American folk tradition than what I had heard on record.
So you were discovering the diversity that it's already there. It's already in the fabric. It's already part of our society. It's just something that may not be talked about, and you were bringing it to the forefront. You were saying, hey, wait a minute, you know, let me tell you why this is so special. Let me tell you why this part of our culture is significant. And let me tell you where the banjo actually came from.
That's correct.
And these are the facts. Really, I mean, this is just history. It's not really something up for debate. It just is what it is.
The banjo is indicative of what we were discussing about the African banjo, is that it's a part of the history, and it's gone through so many permeations, going through different players' hands, no matter who they might be. The history still needs to be discussed. It still needs to be talked about. And in terms of, you know, I've never gone out of my way to say I'm an African-American performer, but it's obvious when I come into a room that I am an African-American. So in this way, I have tried to take the narratives of the different African Americans in history and try to present them out there so people can know that they existed. It's not the first time that this has happened. This is something that's all a part of a very large piece of history.
How many times do you see that aha moment?
There are quite a few different moments because when I do my shows, I try to put out a lot of different musical ideas as well as musical statements, but in a way that is, the audience doesn't perceive exactly how I'm doing it, because that's also my sort of magic as a performer.
Sure.
Is trying to strike that balance between telling you everything and not telling you exactly how I'm relaying the information,
right.
You know?
I know that you spend a lot of time with your educational programs and talking to kids in school. So what do you say to people who are thinking about picking up an instrument?
Well, you've touched upon two wonderful parts of my career. Educational programs, just in general, I think are, once you get to a spot where you feel like you can convey any message to children or anyone younger than yourself, that's educational programs can begin right there. So in that way, that's evolved over time for me. It took me a bit, because I never thought of myself as a kid act, so I never really it was tough for me because I was like, well, do kids really want to hear the type of music I'm playing, you know? But over time I figured out that balance to be able to convey the message of the songs or the stories or even just the instruments to the kids, because I play things like the quills, and now that Mike Seeger's gone, I'm one of the few guys that plays the traditional quills.
Right. Dom, you have entered, it seems like, I don't know if it's a new era in your life or you're doing what you wanted to do as a young boy, because I know growing up in the South, cowboy and Indians were a big thing, and you have found yourself in a cowboy stage, right?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, you know, from the beginning, I've always tried to have some aspect of Southwestern culture in my act. You know, of course, with the guitar, it's meant to have a certain look. This is a hat from Australia, but I got it so it would be sort of like a gaucho hat or a sort of a Mexican vaquero hat. I use a classical guitar straps. Just I was trying to do a Willie Nelson sort of thing, but you know, but even that has its own heritage back in Mexican guitar players and mariachis and things like that.
Can't grow your hair that long, right?
Can't grow my hair like that though. No, I've tried, but just won't go. And so in terms of cowboys in a Southwest culture, I've always tried to present that in some sort of way. But it was about 10 years ago, maybe about 2007 or 8. I was over at the Painted Desert over in Arizona, right on the New Mexican border, and I found a book called The Negro Cowboys, and it spoke about how 1 in 4 cowboys who helped settle the West were African American cowboys. Wow. And so that's kind of where it started, and the book is sort of the first delve into this subject, saying, well, we went into the source material and we found all these stories of these African American cowboys working alongside the Anglo cowboys and also the Mexican vaqueros. And it just opened up the whole idea of the West to me, which was something that literally I knew about from living my life, because the Southwest has always been a very diverse place between new people coming in and people that have been there for a while. So I knew this personally, but to read it in a book, all of a sudden it took me into a whole other place, and it started to bring a lot of musicians I had heard, like Leadbelly and Mance Lipscomb and Henry Thomas, into the space of being cowboys.
Dom, why don't you kind of introduce one of your cowboy songs and share it with the folks.
All right. Well, this one here is called Steel Pony Blues. And now, with everything said, this is one that I wrote about a black cowboy named Nat Love, and he was one of the few to write his own autobiography. But this song, Steel Pony Blues, this one takes a little bit of the Carolina Piedmont picking and takes it out west. And
nice.
So this one's I caught my steel pony and boys, I'm gonna ride. Get down to Holbrook, you won't find me there. Good Lord, I caught the first thing smoking down the road somewhere. Caught the first thing smoking down the road somewhere. 'Cause I caught my steel pony and boys, I'm gonna ride. Getting far too old to follow this here herd. Good Lord, I caught the first thing smoking down the road somewhere. Caught the first thing smoking down the road somewhere. 'Cause I caught my steel pony and boys, I'm gonna ride. Go on, 6.
Dom, great spending time with you.
Yeah, always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.